holes too. But 6 2x2 sheets is like less than $20. And so this is one of the things that you can start to work with and build off of. And if you mess up, you can toss it and be okay.
You're only out a couple of bucks.
Yeah, exactly.
You can also, craft foam comes in different thicknesses. I don't know if you guys have been to like Hobby Lobbies or Michael's or whatever your crafts, or AC Moore's, whatever you happen to have out here. This kind of craft foam here, for those of you who can see it, comes in a lot more thicknesses than they sell, but you have to order it online or you have to find a foam distributor locally. I have the benefit of living near LA, so pretty much everything is at my fingertips for costuming and for fabrication. But online, foammart.com sells this stuff in thicknesses up to 2 inch, depending on what your budget's like. You can buy this stuff ridiculous. The thicker it is, the more expensive it is, but it's also sturdy and it's a lot nicer to work with than your average Harbor Freight $2 squares. It won't be full of holes. It'll have a nice smooth surface already. And it takes paint so much nicer because it won't soak up. It's denser. So that's something maybe to keep in mind as you're shopping around. If you're wanting to make a costume that wants to last a really long time, invest the money in the material to start with, and it will last longer than the stuff from Harbor Freight that will eventually break down.
So as I said, Gary works a lot in foam, but yet we all do too. I mean, there's foam on this thing here too. I use foam as more of a core. This is a start of one of my projects that I had done. It's the same exact stuff that he's wearing. They're big sheets that I put together. I personally use contact cement. I'll paint both sides and stick them together after they're dry. You can use hot glue. I'm from Portland, where we're wusses with weather. I couldn't wear something like this here. I've worn a couple costumes and I was out of them in 3 hours because it was just way too hot in the state. But keep in mind, if you're using hot glue, that will reactivate and become soft again and pliable if you leave these in your car or even walk around a couple blocks outside if you're using hot glue with these kind of things. But one step further, like I said, I use these as a core, but I work a lot with thermoplastics. If you've ever heard of Warbla, they have regular Warbla, they have transparent Warbla. I was with Morton Joe yesterday, his armor's all made out of this. They have Tandy Leathers come out with Terraflex, which is a little bit smoother and more professional looking. Warbla then came back and rebutted with the now black Warbla that is on the market, which I haven't touched yet. They do play well nice together. This is a sample of a whole bunch of scraps that I've reheated and flattened. If you have a pasta roller that you're not using for pasta, great to make your sheets again. Save your scraps because Warbla is really forgiving and you can start with it, and if you mess up, you can go ahead and go back and change it and redo it again. So here's a sample of some of the mandibles for this bug that I'm building. And this one side is just the EVA foam, which is what we're holding up here, and then we went ahead and covered it with Warbla. Now, as Gary was saying, there's holes in these things. It's an open cell product. So when you put these plastics and you trap all those air bubbles in there, and then you add more heat, they need to go somewhere. So this was the second project I've ever done with this Warbla stuff. So the first project, I was chasing the air bubbles around and popping them and trying to flatten them out and causing myself a lot of stress. But when I went and did my bug, I kind of wanted that texture, I wanted the natural stuff. So I used that to my advantage. And with the air bubbles, all I did was just the cheap little wooden sculpting tools that you find by the clay in your craft stores. And I was able to push these around and start to make texture with all these air bubbles. Starting to build him up some more with the arms and such. He was 11.5 feet long. So unfortunately I wasn't able to bring him to this convention because I would never gotten him through anything. But this is the bug from Starship Troopers. We actually were cool enough to have, lucky actually, a whole bunch of friends that had production used and made costumes from the movie. So we had a big pit crew for this guy, and we were all walking around. We got to take him to the EMP Museum in Seattle and stuff like that. So that's one thing that you can do with foam by covering it. Another finishing thing I wanted to go back to you. How do you finish your stuff?
So finishing work with foam, again, you're trying to get rid of the texture that foam naturally has. A lot of people will use Plasti-Dip. Plasti-Dip's great, but Plasti-Dip also has a texture that will pick up any texture underneath it. It's a plastic material that you spray on. A mistake a lot of people use is they don't put it on thick enough. So they try to spray it like spray paint, a couple of small thin layers. You don't want to do that. Plasti dip likes to go on medium thick. Almost to the point that you think it's going to drip and run and look awful. It will self-level. It will actually, the runs will go away as long as the piece isn't too curved. That's one method of utilization that's easy to find. What I prefer is actually a polyurethane spray. It's an automotive type paint. You can add some fillers to it, make it flexible. Or you can use really, like, this is all airbrush. Literally heat formed this, took some, a single coat of Plasti Dip just to sort of make sure I got a uniform texture across, and then airbrushed it. And airbrush, when you're using a latex or a acrylic paint, when it hardens, it never actually hardens. It will stay pliable and soft forever. You'll get these weird little striations that happen. If you leave this in the sun for a little while, they'll go away. Again, everything I use is contact cement. I like barge, if you can get it in this state. I think.
I had to order it online.
Okay. It's illegal a lot of places because of the stuff that's in it. They've made it.
Because it's that cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's also super bad for your breathing, so make sure you wear a mask and a respirator. But so is this stuff. Obviously, eye protection, mask of some sort to keep the dust and debris out. You only get one set of these, just you can pick up every day. And also, a lot of people, if you know this doesn't need to flex again, if this is strictly going to hold a shape and stay that shape forever, you can use a technique like they use for warbler and cover it in wood glue several times. And that will give you a smooth surface that you can sand and paint. The problem with wood glue is it will eventually peel up because of heat. The contact doesn't actually make good contact. Gesso, I've heard people use. I wouldn't particularly use it, but again, it does work. Or you can cover it with a thermoplastic like Ryan does. There's several different types on the market, depending on how much of a pain you want it to be to have to sand it down to get it flat again. For me, it's automotive paints and things. It is a nice, smooth finish every single time. You put it on with your own sort of spray gun. Again, this is advanced, so that's what I would do. But automotive spray paint in a can, it's about $13 or $14, up to $25 per can in a spray can. But it looks 300 times better than anything you'll buy at Walmart in a case from Rust-Oleum or Krylon. Point of contention, don't try to mix your spray paints together if you're using spray paints, if you haven't already tested it on a piece that's tiny and small. Because sometimes the reaction is not something you want after you just spent 60 hours making something beautiful, and now your paint has suddenly started to tear everything apart and eat itself. I speak from experience. It's heartbreaking to have to remake something that you genuinely thought, this is the greatest thing I've ever made in my entire life, and then you paint it, you're like, I have ruined everything. There's several different ways of getting it done. There's no one right way to skin a cat, as it's said. I don't know who's actually skinning cats to figure that out, but another thing is if you are using these mats and you decide to use the textured side, depending on what you pick up, nothing will stick to this. This will always come loose because this has been heat formed. When they make this, they run it over a giant heat roller that burns this in. So this is now slicker than snot, as my father would say, and nothing will stay on this. So you need to hit this with some sandpaper or something, sort of knock down the shine a little bit. You're better off finding a color that's already right, like if you're making Mass Effect armor, this is already perfect color. Boom, now you have a textured piece. This doesn't need to be painted, this doesn't need to be sealed. You're done. It's literally finished. It's hard to tell. The belt, this is just foam. I haven't painted this, I haven't sealed it. This is literally just foam that I cut, made a belt out of, and that's it. It's just a belt. Works just fine. Doesn't need to be painted, doesn't need to be sealed. It's just done. When you're planning your projects, try to plan them around the colors you have. Craft foam comes in 1,000 different colors. You can order it online in every color of the rainbow. We made a Gundam suit using nothing but craft foam and pieces and parts that could be glued together. It didn't need to be painted. It looked perfect right out of the box. So from an advanced standpoint, you don't have to be so advanced. You can go back to simple basics, but you have to think a little bit outside of the box. Okay? Think a little bit outside the box.
And Zach, you also work with foam as well.
Yeah, I've worked a little bit with the foam on the Sparrow. The engine is made mostly out of foam, primarily because it curves easily. Obviously, with a little heat, you can get it to conform to any shape that you want. The rest of the Sparrow had to be durable. I've had several hundred people sitting on this thing this weekend already. There'll be even more people as the day goes on. So the Sparrow is actually built out of a 2x4 frame underneath everything. So it's made to support quite a load. I wasn't sure how many people would be coming through. I didn't want it to start cracking and sagging and then have somebody, little kid sits on it and have it just all fall into pieces. So 2x4 frames. The body was actually done with cardboard. I didn't want to jump straight into something expensive, so I bought a bunch of scraps of cardboard from a local packaging house. I was able to cut it up and form it. Surprisingly, if you take cardboard and you smash it down flat, you can get cardboard to bend in a lot of unique ways. So it was all formed out of cardboard. I'll use masking tape to hold everything together. Once I got to the shape that I wanted it and I was happy with it, I fiberglassed the whole thing. So there was about 50 yards worth of fiberglass, aerospace grade fiberglass, boat hull, stuff like that. So quite a bit of cost went into the Sparrow right there. But it took 2 weeks to get the fiberglass all put on it. About 3 gallons of resin. It started going up there in the weight quite a bit. After that, go back to what every prop maker uses, Bondo. There's 3 gallons of Bondo that's all over that thing. And I got it all smoothed out just the way that I wanted it, sanded a little bit more, find out that there's still a few pinholes, lots more Bondo. Several weeks of Bondo. Seriously, Bondo.
Bondo will not flex though.
Yeah.
Another thing I learned the hard way.
You can't use Bondo on armor too well, but Bondo works well if you need something that's going to be stationary, sturdy, and doesn't have to move a whole lot. On top of the Bondo, there's layers of MDF wood, large sheets of that you can buy at the hardware store. It's essentially sawdust and resin that's mixed together. Definitely use a respirator while you're cutting that. The chemicals that are in there include formaldehyde, so you don't want to be breathing that while you're cutting through it and sanding it and things like that. But there's lots of layering, as Gary was saying, just layers of MDF wood, plastic, acrylic, Sintra, styrene, everything went just added on top of it just to make all the different layers that you see there and create all those details. After that, I went through and I started cutting and creating all the portals for the lights, ran wiring through everything. It's run off of a 12-volt Power Wheels battery that's housed in one of the wings. Unfortunately, the battery only lasts for about 5 hours with as many LEDs as I have running through there, but there's 140, 150 some LEDs all through the entire thing. 12-volt, 7-amp-hour battery only lasts for 5 hours, so I'm drawing just over 1.2 amps through this thing. It comes out pretty warm, but it's all lit up, and when it gets dark, it looks really nice. You can sit on it, the gauges all light up, the engine lights up. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, it's sturdy. With all the fiberglass and the resin and the Bondo and MDF, everything put together, I've had at least 200 to 300 people come in and sit on it, and it almost flipped earlier today when the guys hopped on it a little fast, but it's okay. You need something that's sturdy. Fiberglass is definitely the way to go as long as you're willing to put the money into it.
And we're talking about advanced cosplay. These obviously has workspace to handle these chemicals and stuff like that. It doesn't always have to be that. I started not too long ago watching these kind of YouTube videos of tutorials and stuff like that, and joining forums like the Replica Prop Forum and United Prop Builders, watching all these amazing things going, and I'm just like, I live in a little tiny studio, like my stairwell is my paint booth, and I gotta sleep next to these chemicals. So I kind of like do things a little bit differently than these bigger builds and stuff like that. One of the examples is you watch these shows like Face Off and Jim Henson's workshop, where they have the chance to mold all these things with clay, and then they make a sculpt, a mold of that, and then you got yourself a negative, then you pour the latex in there to get a positive, and they do all these different things, and they have the big slop sinks and stuff like that, and I'm working on my dining room table, and I gotta eat on it afterwards, so I kind of do things a little bit differently, and I wanted to show you real quick another thing. We've covered different things such as the Sentra and stuff like that. The styrene is another one that I work with too, that he had mentioned. But liquid latex is another one that I love to use in my costumes a lot because of the fact that I don't wear makeup well, and I can only cosplay Kevin Smith so many times that I need to start wearing masks. So here's one real quick that I'm going to go through and hop around. I start with upholstery foam. If you don't want to tear up your couches, you can get this at the craft store. They usually sell it by the foot. It comes in different sizes and widths and colors and stuff like that, but it's basically just couch cushions. I basically just went and did a rough shape for what I was working with. And then with batting, this is the stuff that just goes into quilts. I just sprayed it with spray glue, and with batting covered it and kind of smoothed off all of the areas that we're looking at. Now you could do this all with upholstery foam, and I've seen people do that where they take hours and hours of scissors work and all this stuff to carve it and shave it down to get all these smooth effects, and then you get this stuff all over the place, and like I said, you need to sleep in the same area, so I don't want that big mess. So I found with this tacky glue that I can just spray it down, put the batting on, and the next step I'll do is I'll cover paper towels with it so whatever I work with doesn't seep into the batting. If you're doing this thing, make sure you're ripping off the edges so you don't have any hard edges on there. Also, don't get the paper towels with the cute little flowers or whatever on there because that will show up through your product. Then we go into the liquid latex. Now, liquid latex, I find a gallon for it on eBay for under 50 bucks. You can buy a lot smaller ones at the Halloween stores. November 1st is the cheapest day to stock up on your cosplay supplies, so you can think about that too if you know what you're going to do in advance. They also sell it for 10, 20 bucks more. They sell you colored versions of these things. The little craft paints that you find, the acrylic ones at the hobby stores, you can mix that into your latex and tint that. This one I obviously tinted white. This is just basically paper towels with latex on here, and I have two different things where one side I did the stipple and the other one I used a brush. But that's all it is, just a paper towel and latex, and like I said, you guys can check these out afterwards. But here I was making eyelids. I used a sheet of chocolate molds. They come in like 6 different little domes there. I cut those out for the eyes, and then I blended that back into the head that I was working on. For patterning, I basically just cover it with some saran wrap or tinfoil or whatever I have extra of, and then go down to masking tape. You want to make sure you're paying directions so you can draw out your cut lines, but like I said, make sure you're paying attention to the way that you want your fur to lay. And then I just cut that off and flip that on, and here he is without a haircut, and there's his hair everywhere. Here's more EVA foam. Dremel's one of the amazing tools that I have other than a heat gun. So with that, you can shape this into anything, but this is just regular EVA foam that I've carved into his teeth. And then we have the head and putting scales on it, but this is velvet.